Shots. The idea makes some grown men I know get queasy and weak in the knees. Most of us avoid them if we can, and no one I know actively seeks them out. I got the regular vaccinations as I was growing up, and other than a booster shot here and there, I don't really think much about it. But a conversation several years ago changed my mind. Soon after my son started medical school, we had an extensive conversation about vaccinations. He was animatedly discussing the merits of herd immunity. Herd immunity is the idea that an entire community is protected when almost everyone is immunized. If someone in the community contracts, say, polio, which is something nearly everyone is vaccinated against, then no one will catch it because for all practical purposes, the whole community is immunized. The group as a whole protects babies who are too young to receive vaccinations, the seriously ill who can't be immunized, and the elderly. We no longer had children at home, but we did have two small grandchildren. It had been many years since my last booster shot, and I'd never had a flu shot. But this conversation with my son changed how I looked at my own immunization record. The very last thing I wanted to do was to put the health of my grandchildren in jeopardy because I didn't want to get a shot or was uninformed about vaccinations. In the last 15 years, there's been a lot of public conversations about vaccinations, and it mostly began in 1998 when the highly regarded English medical journal, The Lancet, published a study by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. In the paper, Dr. Wakefield reported finding a link between the MMR vaccine, which is measles, mumps, rubella, and autism. It gained a wide audience following the publication because the incidence of autism has risen steadily since the 1960s. There are no easy answers to explain why so many children are diagnosed with autism now. Many people jumped on the bandwagon, happy to find a reason or a cause for autism. Though the paper stoked fears across the world, this study appears to be a correlational link only, not causal, meaning that Dr. Wakefield was attempting to show that children who had had the MMR vaccine also had a high incidence of autism, not that MMR caused autism. Even before the study was published, though, Dr. Wakefield made statements calling for the suspension of the MMR vaccine, and thus began the birth of the anti-vaccine crusades across the world. The problem is that the paper Dr. Wakefield wrote was later retracted by The Lancet for ethical misconduct on Wakefield's part. A Canadian journalist subsequently reported that Dr. Wakefield had prearranged with a pharmaceutical company to produce a study that would show current vaccine delivery systems as defective. This pharmaceutical company would then release a new formulation that would find huge financial success. Many worried parents still follow the counsel of celebrities who believe Dr. Wakefield's study was genuine and the advice these public personalities give to forego vaccinations altogether. What has happened has been a resurgence of what was once considered eradicated childhood diseases. I want to tell the story of a young family told in the words of the father. In the early 1990s, we lived in Berlin, Germany. We were young and full of plans for the future. My wife was working as a nurse, and I had just started my professional career as an engineer. We became a little family when our oldest son was born. We built our nest, had great friends and neighbors, and simply enjoyed life as a young family. As most parents probably are, we were very grateful and thankful. 2 years later, our second child, Max, saw the light of day and made our family happiness complete. When he got sick that winter, we were a bit worried because of his young age. After all, Max was only 6 months old when measles hit him badly. It had been way too early for vaccination, but not too early for infection. He spent several days with a high fever, while his pediatrician feared that he would develop some sort of complications. And he did. His lungs got affected, he developed a dry cough, and sometimes he even had difficulties breathing. We were concerned, and had had no clue that nobody had ever mentioned anything about potentially fatal measles complications. After a few weeks, though, everything was over. Max had recovered, and as spring came, the vivid, high-energy boy was back. This father was relieved that they had survived a serious bout with measles, but 10 years later, Max began having seizures. At first, the doctors thought it was due to epilepsy, which can sometimes happen just before puberty. Many doctors and opinions later, though, the parents found out that Max had a complication of having had measles at an early age. This particular complication is always fatal. 2 years into their fight, Max had a flare-up that put him into a vegetative state. He lived several more years under his parents' care and recently passed away. I now see herd immunity as a responsibility we all have to keep the children, the elderly, and those unable to be vaccinated healthy. The actions we take or don't affect the lives of those around us. There have been cases of whooping cough and measles where I live, and children too young to be immunized have died. When I asked my son recently what he would tell parents who do not vaccinate, he didn't hesitate for a minute. He said, "Allowing perfectly avoidable disease and death to come upon your children because of stupid beliefs that vaccinations are not normal is like not buckling up your kids because seatbelts are not normal. It's dumb, and you should be held personally responsible." So he's not a doctor yet, and maybe he will have more tact when actually working with parents. So what do? There are 4 things. Make sure our children's immunizations are current and that they stay current. Be educated about vaccinations and encourage our friends to be educated also. Get adult booster shots. Lifetime immunity does not exist for most vaccines. And 4th, get vaccinated for the flu. Do your part to protect those around you. Get your shots.